Hello out there in lecture land. It's Deb Miller. I'm going to talk to you all today about leadership, the principles of leadership and management. I'm going to start out with a quote from Charles Lauer. He said, "Leaders don't force people to follow, they invite them on a journey." So I want you to keep that in mind as you continue to pursue your nursing degree, your profession, as you continue to grow in your profession, and everyone in this room will become a leader and have already become leaders on some levels. So as you continue and climb the ranks, if you will, you invite folks to join you on the journey. I said the other day, behind every great leader is a great follower, and it takes great followers to make great leaders. So we may all start out as followers, and eventually we'll become leaders, and sometimes we have to follow, even though we're a leader. So keep that in mind. Some qualities that I think make good leaders and managers is that a leader selects and assumes the role. A manager is assigned or appointed to the role. So that's a little bit different. It doesn't matter what your title is. You can still lead. And I think the best rule of thumb is lead by example. Lead by example. And anyhow, an effective leader facilitates, coordinates, cooperates, and supports those that he or she leads, okay? So you've got to be supportive of everybody on your team, okay? So just a little introduction, if you will. As you begin your nursing career, you will have the opportunity to work with various members of the team. You're going to work with lots of different personality types, if you will. You'll work with different managers, different peers. You'll be caring for, different types of patients with various patient loads. I wish I could say that every day is going to be great and easy and wonderful. There's going to be some tough days ahead, and you're ready for that. You just need to understand that, you'll have some tough days, but you'll have, I hope, by far more pleasant days that offsets those tough days. But you've got what it takes. You just got to work hard and dig in and ask for help. Okay, that's always a very important thing. As you progress in your nursing career, your responsibilities may change. You may go from staff nurse to team leader, charge nurse, supervisor, etc. Your roles and responsibilities will change as you continue on. You're going to encounter various leadership styles. You yourself will change your style of leadership or management, and a lot of times it depends on the situation, if you will. So, leaders and managers, if you will, are responsible for groups of people or perhaps a group of patients. If you're the team leader, you may be responsible for groups of patients. You're going to be working with members of the healthcare team. We've already said that. You're going to need management and leadership skills. That's part of the learning process, and you'll get more comfortable with your leadership style and your leadership skills with experience and exposure, okay? There's some folks who can just walk right out onto the floor and will feel comfortable leading, delegating, and managing. And then others, it takes a little while, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because certainly you're going to learn with experience, and certainly learn as you work more with others that have been doing this for a while, okay? Certainly, this is a definition, if you will. Management coordinates activities of others to accomplish a common goal. Managers, we've got a plan. We need to, we need to determine what needs to be done. This is kind of like the nursing process, if you will. We're going to have to organize how we get the work done. And then we're going to be a director, if you will, who's going to do the work and supervise that. And then controlling how and when it's going to be accomplished. Here's the thing. Successful managers are those who respect the people of the organization as individuals and also cares how well the tasks are done. Now, leaders, however, sometimes it's about, or a lot of times it's just about the task itself, and there's others who they're not worried so much about the task. It's more about getting it done, marking it off. And some of you in this room, perhaps maybe that's your style. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes you got to be careful. you look at the situation as to how you want to approach that as far as your leadership style or your management style. Leadership. Would you agree that you can't be a good manager without being a good leader? Sometimes you see folks who are great managers, and maybe their leadership styles is not so much. Maybe their interpersonal skills are lacking, and that's just how it is. And sometimes there's managers who are so unapproachable, and it's because of the nature of their position, if you will. But leadership certainly is getting others to help you accomplish the goal. You kind of do it as a teamwork. So, teamwork is just that. You're working in a team and helping each other. Management process, as I've already said, is similar to the nursing process, all right? Problem solving and decision making are two very key skills that both great managers and great leaders have to incorporate into their practice. Florence Nightingale was an early nursing leader among many other roles. Florence Nightingale did a whole lot of things for nursing. She did a lot of things outside of nursing. If you ever Google Florence Nightingale, she has some real interesting background. She, loved pets. I learned a lot researching her one time, and she began some of her compassionate care by caring for childhood pets. So, but she was a statistician to begin with, and in those days, women, really weren't in the workforce, if you will. But she loved number crunching, so I figure that's why we have all these dosage calculation strategies, if you will. But yeah, she was a great leader, and it's because of her that, we nurse and care for patients the way we do. It's because of her that we incorporate the infection control standards and measures are in place because of her. So, but anyhow, that's that. I'm going to move to the next slide. Let's talk about some leadership attitudes. The good leader brings flexibility into each situation. Would y'all agree on that? Sure. Good leaders got to be flexible. Remember, I've said we got to have plan A, B, and Z. So, if you're so rigid in your plan of care or in the process of delegating or assigning patients, it's going to be very difficult. Your team is going to be stressed a lot because you're so inflexible. Got to be flexible. Roll with the punches, if you will. Okay. The leader that's high in both job-centered and employee-centered behaviors cares equally for the needs and feelings of the employee. Okay? So up here I've got balanced need to accomplish work versus the needs of the employee. So, some folks, it's all about getting the work done. Forget about who's doing it and how it gets done. It's all about checking it off. So some folks are very high job-centered, meaning that we just focus on the task and only the task. And then some are high employee-centered. Well, I'm worried about my people. I know I got to get this done, but, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I got to consider who I'm asking to do this with me. So, good leaders carefully balance the two, okay? And just so you know, if some of you are sitting there thinking, well, I'm not ever going to be a leader, well, leadership can be learned, and leaders develop others, meaning that leaders develop other leaders. They develop their colleagues. They develop their peers. A lot of times, I think leaders develop others through motivation. And, a lot of positive thinking and a lot of constructive feedback, not critical, but constructive feedback and honesty. Goes a long way with mentoring and motivating folks to take up the lead, okay? And a lot of times, the leader knows when it's time for you to lead. A lot of times we know it before you do, just like we know you're ready for the workforce and long before you all may be ready to feel ready, if that makes sense. So anyhow, I want you to know that there's some theories behind leadership and management, and one of them is Theory X. And Theory X has a lot of assumptions, okay? And just listen to this. I'm not so bent on you writing all this down, but just think about this in terms, and you may have experiences if you've been in the workforce or people who have. The Theory X assumption is that average individuals inherently dislike work and will avoid it whenever possible. Now imagine that. They dislike work. They don't want the responsibility. The average individual under this theory prefers to be directed, wants to avoid responsibility, and is more interested in financial incentives than personal achievement. So, in other words, what's in it for me? Am I going to, will this get me some more money? Am I going to get a bonus? That kind of thing. Rather than, personal satisfaction for having done a job well done, if you will. And this theory also assumes that because people dislike work, they must be controlled, threatened, and even coerced to put forth enough effort to meet the organizational objectives. So, that's the mindset. And I don't know that it's all 100% true, but that's an assumption of theory X. Now, theory Y, which I think where most of us fall into, certainly we gain satisfaction from work. I mean, very few nurses you're going to find that just hate. Now, they may hate what they're doing at that moment, okay? Sometimes we get burnout. We'll talk about burnout in a few weeks, but, with nursing, there's so many more opportunities that if you don't like what you're doing, move on and find something that does make you happy, and hopefully it'll be still within nursing, but typically nurses fall under theory Y. We gain satisfaction from our work, and we want that responsibility. Theory Y assumptions are that, we should encourage workers to develop to their fullest potential. Usually it's a natural thing to work hard and achieve numerous goals. It's normal to, or under this theory Y, it's about self-direction and pursuing goals, and being very committed to what you're doing and to the job at hand. And under normal conditions or proper conditions, the average person learns both to seek and accept responsibility. And I think that speaks to every one of us in this room. Would you agree? Sure. We all want that responsibility. We know we're not right out of the chute maybe, but eventually that's what you're going to want, the responsibility. You want to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and do it. So, I think that we all, like I said, fall pretty much under theory Y, because I believe that it's important that you gain satisfaction from your work and you want the responsibility. I mean, yeah, there are going to be hard days, but it doesn't mean that you're not satisfied at the end of the day, okay? So let's look at some leadership styles, and you'll want to make sure you have these pretty much under your belt, okay? Know the difference between these. The first one we're going to talk about is the autocratic leader. The autocratic leader. You're going to encounter various management leadership styles in your career. One style you're going to encounter is the autocratic leader. And think of it this way. They're the folks that are, it's my way or the highway. Okay? They're very authoritarian. They make most of their decisions alone without input from their staff. Okay? Emphasis here is on getting tasks done, not those who are performing it. So these folks are high job centered, okay? This particular style makes all the decisions and assigns all the tasks, okay? Oftentimes they believe that employees can't be trusted and you have to really coerce them into working. Now these folks have low people skills. I've got people low skill level. Sorry about that. People skills are very low level. They'd rather just do it themselves than ask anybody to do it, okay? But I will tell you this. This style is very effective in a crisis, like a disaster. Because think about it this way. If they've just called a mass disaster code, a big outbreak, tornado. Okay, let's use the tornado outbreak. There's a mass casualty. Okay, they've just called that overhead. Well, you don't want folks standing around going, you be in charge. No, you be in charge. No, I'm not going to do that. You do it. No, you want somebody to step up and say, okay, I need you to go over here and I need you to go over here and I need 3 people to step down to the ER. So you need someone to take charge. This particular leadership style is perfect for that. Perfect for that. Okay, the next one is your democratic style. This is a more people-oriented style. They're more employee-centered, and think of it this way. Let's have a show of hands, okay? So we're all in this together, okay? The staff participates in decision-making, and they usually have a lot of autonomy, if you will. However, the final decision-making remains with with the manager or this type of leader, okay? However, they're allowing their staff to take ownership for the job and of a job, okay? So they're not trying to run the show totally. They're still the manager, they're still the leader, but they're allowing some autonomy amongst their staff, okay? Usually the environment here, when you see this type of leadership style, how many of you have ever seen these type styles? Great, okay, I see several of you. You know, as you're precepting and doing your clinicals, or even as you start working, you're going to see various styles. You can even tell the style of the manager when you walk onto the unit, because they create such an environment within the workplace that you can almost tell what kind of leadership is there, okay? It's real interesting to see, because you can almost pinpoint what kind of leader they have by the environment, if you will. Certainly, democratic leaders use cooperative decision methods to draw ideas from employees. They motivate their employees to be participative in making decisions and that sort of thing. They allow, again, a lot of autonomy with their employees, okay? The next one is laissez-faire. It's the whatever type. I call it the letting alone style of leadership, okay? The letting alone. There's very distinct lack of direction there. Control of staff is minimal. Self-functioning and solving problems themselves. It's not done as a group. The actual leader here shucks their responsibility, meaning that they don't take ownership for their position, if you will. They don't take ownership as being the leader. It's like, oh, whatever y'all want to do is fine. Workers are left without direction. They allow the team to plan, execute, and evaluate any way they want. So it's probably mass chaos, if you could imagine. Now, I will tell you this. The laissez-faire style is rarely, if ever, used in the hospital. You know that, because in a hospital, we have rules, we got guidelines, and, you know, things have to happen in an orderly manner and in a timely manner. Would you agree? Okay, like meds. You know, if it was like whatever you want to do, no one would get their meds on time. Procedures wouldn't be carried out. So you won't see the laissez-faire type used very often, if ever, okay? But you may see this within a team or within a group, okay? But not globally. You won't see laissez-faire, okay? The other one is situational or contingency. This is the style that fits the situation, okay? Now, understand this. There will be times when you may have to be autocratic. There will be times when you have to be democratic, okay? It depends on the situation, okay? So, you know, leadership can shift from one style to another depending on the situation. Now, also, too, leadership can shift from one person to another within a team. But it all depends on the situation with this particular style, okay? So anyhow, understand that, you know, sometimes you have to change and go with the flow, okay? Whatever's happening at the time. Okay? So, it's kind of odd to put this in here, but, you know, we got to talk about, when you're talking about leadership and getting work done through others, you know what happens, right? We get a little conflict because, you know what, I don't really want to do what you've asked me to do. You know, you're trying to be a great leader and a great manager, and sometimes it's very difficult because you're going to be dealing with different types of people, different personality types especially, okay? So, unfortunately, we're going to see conflict, okay? We're going to see conflict, and it can be uncomfortable. It can certainly be uncomfortable, but one thing about conflict before we get to the responses here, you know, it has various outcomes. It'll either, good things can come out of conflict if you believe that. So, you know, maybe you have a conflict and you have to work through it. You know, maybe it's a conflict with how you're performing or doing something in particular on your unit. Well, because of a conflict, we might have a different way of looking at something. So sometimes good comes out of conflict, okay? Oftentimes out of conflict, new leaders emerge, okay? So understand that sometimes, You know, some good can come out of conflict, and because it helps you to work through whatever the situation is, and helps you to look at different things, look at things differently, if you will. So I wish I could say you won't experience conflict, but you will. And if anything, remember this: choose your battles wisely. If there's a conflict going on, don't let it brew. Address it, but address it in a very professional manner. And be careful where you address this, okay? In other words, you're not having a tag team wrestling match at the desk, okay? Take it to the conference room. But again, you want to be professional. You don't want to get into a shouting match and name calling because, you know, you don't want to say something that you're going to regret later, okay? So be very careful with that, okay? So when a conflict arises, okay, first thing is, oh, I'm getting so mad or angry, okay? It's frustrating, it's disappointing, you feel powerlessness. And unfortunately, it blocks the real issues. You know, folks get mad, and then if you get mad, it's harder to work through. It's very harder to work through the conflict because you're not letting anything in, okay? It affects your interpersonal relationships if you're angry. You know, anger has two faces. Did you know that? Sure does. Guilt. That's anger aimed inward at what we did or did not do, okay? So some people feel angry out of guilt, okay? And then some people feel angry out of resentment, and it's directed toward others and what they did or did not do, okay? So, you know, anger can be a two-way street, if you will. You know, the thing of it is you gotta, when you're dealing with anger or an angry person, okay, you know, ventilation may not be enough, meaning that you got to take a deep breath and just relax. You know, in other words, you need a plan for resolving and dealing with anger. And if you know you have anger issues or you're quick-tempered, you've heard people say that, you know, you need to get that under control. And again, pick your battles wisely, and sometimes we just want to blurt it out. You got to be real careful. Be real careful. Remain calm and stick to the facts and only the facts. You know, if you're dealing with a conflict and it's a very heated kind of conflict, stick to the facts of that particular conflict. Don't bring up old business, okay? You don't want to do that. You don't want to bring up what happened in the past, because that's something that should have been taken care of in the past. But as I said, when you're dealing with conflict, if it brews, then it suddenly explodes, and then, yeah, we want to bring up what happened. You know, oh, and by the way, you know, last month you did the same thing. Well, you didn't tell me last month. So you need to, as things start brewing, instead of letting it get to the point where you explode, try to address it. You know, but if you're really angry about something, don't address it right then. Step back, take a deep breath, write down what's causing the conflict. Put your thoughts on paper, because sometimes that helps you to work through that anger. It helps you work through some thought processes so that you don't blurt out something that you really wish you hadn't, okay? And again, you know, conflict's one of those things, and it's going to happen, and you'll be prepared. I know a lot of orientations kind of work through some of that conflict management, and your book, Nursing Today, has some great information on conflict management. Now, next week I'm going to record some lecture on communication and such, and I'll address it again, and we'll go a little further, okay? But when we're talking about leadership and management, unfortunately, you know, there's going to be conflicts because somebody's not going to like some of the decisions you have to make and some of the direction you have to give, okay? So let's talk about managing our anger. Got to get it under control, you know, and you know, when you're dealing with conflict and it's made you angry, again, deal with the issues, not the person. Not the person. If it is the person that's irritating you, then you deal with that, but don't blur the two, okay? If it's an issue that's causing the conflict, then let's work on the issue without bashing anybody's personality or the way they practice and that sort of thing. Just stick to the issues and to the facts, ma'am, okay? And remember, sometimes this conflict, you know, good things comes out of that. Different way of thinking. So, but while you're working on this conflict and you're brewing a little bit, got a little anger going on, let me help you here. I want you to stop. Just stop. Don't do a thing. Reappraise the situation. Okay? So when you get angry, instead of like lashing out, just stop. Take a step back. Excuse yourself. Okay? Excuse yourself. Don't let others see you so angry, because then they're going to go, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? And then that's the rumor mill, okay? And we'll talk about that in another lecture. Here's the other thing. Face it. Name the feeling. I feel angry when, or I feel hurt when. Okay? So be specific. Get in touch with what's making you angry, okay? Instead of, have you ever heard people say, I don't know why I'm so mad? Well, okay, if you don't, I certainly don't, and I can't help you, right? So, take a deep breath, name it, embrace it, ask, whatever's causing the reaction, and it's you, because you're allowing yourself to get angry. So, embrace it, own it, and let's work through it, okay? Embrace it. Ask what's causing the problem and who owns the problem. Is it you or is it with someone else, okay? And then let's erase it. Determine an action. Take action. Let go of the rest. You know what? Focus on the positive. Focus on the positive. Sometimes you can use humor. Now, let me just caution you about using humor when somebody's angry, okay? Or when there's a conflict. It's got to be appropriate for the situation. If someone's really mad and you start kind of popping jokes off, that won't go well. They won't go well, okay? So, sometimes, and if it's you that's causing the conflict, or, getting everybody all flared up, if it's directed back at you, that's one thing. But if someone is really angry and then you're joking with them, they're going to interpret that as you're belittling them, or you're not taking them seriously. Or you don't want to know why they're so angry, especially if you're the one that's causing it. So think about that. Okay? Some styles of managing anger. We all do our different thing, okay? Everybody handles conflict differently. The steps are the same. You got to work through it. You got to identify it, come up with a plan and all. But some folks handle their anger a little differently. We have the pursuers. They seek togetherness in a relationship. They talk things out. They express their feelings. That's how they manage their anger. Sometimes they may label themselves as too dependent or too demanding. They tend to criticize their counterparts. So that's how they kind of work through their anger. They may criticize others a little bit. Okay? Then we have distancers. That's how they manage their anger. They seek emotional distance. They intensify their work-related activities. They just throw themselves right into it. They're, very dependent on their work. Okay, so they try to, almost avoid the situation altogether, if you will. So, but they're distancers. Okay. Then we have underfunctioners. They will invite others to take over. They have a hard time dealing with the stress, okay? A lot of times these folks are the focus of family gossips. They're labeled as the fragile one, or, the problem. And, some of y'all probably have heard that in your families, oh, it's, who. And people raise their eyebrows. So these folks, they just, they don't handle their anger very well. They just choose not to, actually. They just let others kind of run right over them. Overfunctioners, they take over. Those are the ones that may lash out. They know what's best for everybody else, and as they're in their fit of anger, they're lashing and telling everybody what to do and how they should be doing it, if you will. Then we got your blamers. These folks usually get real tore up, if you will. It's very emotional. They may even fight. Some folks, when they're angry, they just lash out and they have a very short fuse, and it's everybody else's fault. So that makes sense. They're blaming everybody else, okay? Some folks, the pursuers, they seek it out. They try to work it through. Distancers, they keep themselves at a distance so they don't have to really deal with it. Underfunctioners, it's just as it says. You know what? That's how they manage their anger. They just, let others take it over. They kind of run. They're okay with people running over them. And your overfunctioners are going to take over. And then your blamers, it's everybody's fault but yours. Okay? Short fuse. Okay? Short fuse. So that's anger. And hopefully you won't ever get to that point, but just know you got to keep it under control if you do have that. And I don't see that in anybody in here. So anyhow, just always keep this in mind. Take a deep breath, step back, let it go, size up the situation, make sure you heard what you thought you heard, okay, before you lash out, and pick your battles wisely, okay? So dealing with anger and different types of leadership, your coworkers aren't the only ones that are going to have issues or, conflicts and such. You're going to have probably, you're going to deal with patient complaints as well, not necessarily about you, but maybe about your coworker. And that's really hard when you step into a patient's room and they'll say something like, you know what, that nurse on day shift, she is just terrible. I can't get her in here and she won't do anything for me. And you're taking all this in. Well, that nurse on day shift happens to be, let's say, your best friend or, she's certainly your coworker, but sometimes it can be very uncomfortable, okay? So, try not to show emotions. That's a good time for nurse face, okay? When you're dealing with patient complaints or patient conflicts, if you will, listen without interrupting, okay? Listen without interrupting and remain calm, okay? Just remain calm, especially if they're complaining about you, okay? Avoid arguing with the patient, okay? That's very key. You don't ever want to argue with the patient, all right? Acknowledge that the message is heard. So acknowledge what you heard to make sure you heard it correctly, okay? And that's not arguing. That's just clarifying, if you will, okay? And certainly you're going to clarify any points. Get the specific information, okay? If you got a complaint and they're complaining about something, make sure you have all your facts right. Certainly if you've got to do something about it or you're going to go report it or what have you, make sure you have your facts as accurate can be. And then you're going to move toward problem solving. If a patient's complaining about something, perhaps maybe it's, every time they bring my tray in, they leave the lid on, or they put it on the overbed cart that's across the room and I can't get up. And that can be an issue. That can lead to patient falls and such. So, you get all the facts and then you move to problem solving and something along the lines of, when you see the lady that's delivering the trays, hey, this patient in 292 can't get up. We've got to make sure that their tray is moved over to them, okay? And then as a nurse, you go in the room, if you know this, you go in the room when you see the trays being delivered and help get that tray set up. It's not always that person that delivers them has time to do that, but as a nurse, and we know this is an issue, we can help channel some of that conflict or that anger and complaint by following up. Sometimes all it takes is just a simple follow-up. So you follow up by going in the room and making sure their tray is set up, okay? Very good. So that's some little hodgepodge of stuff. Let's talk a little bit about effective communication, and just got a few things, and we'll go through this, and this will be it for this little snippet, if you will. As nurses, we need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to share our ideas, our opinions. We need to be able to give clear direction and instructions. If we all know about communication because you've had this before, but effective communication consists of transmitting an accurate message to the proper recipient in the appropriate manner. So you need to say what you need to say and mean what you say. Does that make sense? So, how many times have you ever said something to somebody and it was miscommunication, or I didn't understand that, or it came across wrong? We got to be real clear with that, okay? When you're communicating, say what you mean. And of course, I'm talking right now about verbal communication. The electronic communication is a whole nother conversation. Once you put it in an email or a Twitter or a text, or remember I said Snapchat the other day, whatever that is, once it's gone, folks. So you got to be real careful how you communicate that way, because you might not mean it that way, but we might read it and think, wow, that's that's inappropriate, and maybe that's not what your intentions were. So be real careful when you're talking about communication, and certainly the written communication. I learned one time that if you do lots of exclamation points and in all caps, it's like you're screaming at somebody. So be real careful with that, okay? So we have, along with leadership styles, we've got communication styles. And, it's real important that as nurses, we've got to be able to communicate, right? That's right. And certainly as you continue your nursing career, if you're in charge, you got to be able to communicate adequately and appropriately, professionally, all those things with your team. So here's one style, passive communication. When you're talking about conflict and all, they're going to avoid conflict at all costs. So they're just going to remain passive. They always allow others to make the decisions. They're fairly liked by their coworkers, but there's not a lot of respect because you've heard people say they don't have any backbone, they won't stand up. These folks are totally passive. Problems rarely get resolved. The work doesn't get done. There may be a little bit attempt at it, but the work doesn't get done. Okay? They just choose not to communicate, so they may attempt to do it all, but it's rare that they can get it done at all. This type of communication allows people to push them around. They don't stand up for themselves, and they have great difficulty asking for help. And remember, when we're talking about, yesterday we were talking about delegation, and I said, it's okay to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. We got to get in the habit of, if it's okay to ask for help, it really is okay. Because nursing's hard. We got to be able to help each other, okay? So, anyhow, I just wanted to share that with you, okay? Let's move on to this one. Aggressive communication. That's the high premium on the job at expense of staff and needs, okay? They put themselves first, okay? And they usually attempt to humiliate or put other people down. Have you ever noticed anybody like that? That's a tough one. They're very hard to be around, okay? They're valued by institution, but the staff may sabotage their goals, okay? So, they may be quite the intimidator, but the institution, the team, let's say the nurse manager really values them because, they get the job done. It doesn't matter how they get it done, but they get the job done. The staff doesn't particularly care for them that way. They convey righteous and superior attitudes. Have you ever noticed people like that? They try to control and manipulate others, and they show really very little concern for others' feelings. Unfortunately, these folks may burn out from constant battling. I mean, it's, as the term says, they're aggressive. So it's like they're constantly battling somebody, okay? So, anyhow, that's always real tough. Real tough. Hold on, I'm going to put you on hold for just a second. Okay, I'm back. So, okay, let's talk about assertive communication. Assertive is getting work done while meeting employees' needs, okay? They stand up for themselves without violating others. They communicate expectations without violating. So they can stand up for themselves, they can communicate with others, and they're not being ugly to anybody. They're getting the job done. They don't rule through intimidation. It's more of a teamwork effort. This type of communication and people who enlist in assertive, they don't let others take advantage of them. They're able to stand up for themselves. They accept compliments and criticism, and that's real important. We all got to be able to accept the compliments, but also the criticisms, and sometimes that's hard to hear, but how are you going to improve, okay? It's okay sometimes. Now, certainly, I'm talking about constructive criticism where someone is sharing some thoughts with you to help you improve and make you better. Certainly, but, when you're assertive, you're able to handle that, okay? You hear people say, You just got to toughen up. And, I've heard that before. I know that's shocking, right? But I've heard people say you got to toughen up. Well, let me just tell you this. Toughen up does not equal being mean or non-compassionate, okay? When someone tells you to toughen up, that means, stand up for yourself. Doesn't mean be mean or aggressive or surly. It means stand up for yourself and have confidence. And I think that when you're utilizing assertive communication styles, you're confident. Throw those shoulders back, hold your head up high. You got this. Be confident. When folks see you kind of cower down or are unsure of yourself, that's when they want to swoop in and are really aggressive. And then folks sometimes will tend to be more passive, when you're dealing with an aggressive person. So be assertive. Stand up, say what you mean, and say what you need, okay? Let's talk about how we can develop some assertive behaviors, okay? We're going to all accept that we're less than perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. Okay, and admit it. Admit if you forgot something, or you've omitted something, or you hurt somebody's feelings, or you said something out of line. Admit it. Accept that we're not perfect. Nobody is. You can disagree with an idea, but you're still going to respect the person. It's not about the person. Even if someone doesn't agree with your idea, they're not disagreeing with you. They're just disagreeing with your idea. Okay? We're going to confront the difficulties. Okay? We got to learn how to say no. And I know that sounds kind of bizarre, huh? Say it with me. No. Yes, see, that's okay. You can say no. We can't do it all. And sometimes, I know there's folks in this room, and I'm guilty of it too. We want to say yes to everything. And what happens is when you say yes to everything, then you burn yourself out or you can't get your work done. For instance, if you're at work and they're like, can you come help me? Can you come help me? Can you go do this for me? Can you do that for me? Sure, I can do that. But then no one's helping you do your work. So you can say, I got to take care of my patients and then I'll be glad to come and help you. So that's okay. Or, no, I can't help you right now. I'm covered up. That's okay to say no. Okay? We got to learn how to say that. And once you start working, and let's say if they're short staffed, they're going to call you every day. And if you ever say yes, and it's okay to say yes, they'll know who they can count on. So, but if you've worked 12 days in a row and you really need a day off and they've called you, it's okay to say, no, I can't today. I need to take care of some other things, but thank you anyway. You don't always have to say yes, and it's okay to say no, and no one looks down on you for saying no, okay? You need to learn to recognize manipulation, okay? Recognize it and avoid it. Okay, here's some barriers to developing assertiveness. They're not on the slide, but just listen to this, okay? Assertiveness should come easily. Well, that's wrong. It takes self-awareness and practice. You got to practice to be assertive, okay? Assertive behavior is just another way of complaining. No, that's wrong, okay? Assertiveness is not complaining, okay? There's no difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness. That's wrong. Assertiveness is standing up for yourself that doesn't violate others. Aggressiveness puts yourself above others with little regards for anybody's feelings, okay? So those are some myths and some barriers to standing in the way of being assertive. Benefits of being assertive is certainly it's an effective way to let people know what you feel, what you need, what you're thinking about. It helps you to feel good about yourself and allows you to treat others with respect. Being assertive helps you to avoid feeling guilty, angry, resentful, confused, or lonely. Have you ever felt like, man, I wish I had said that? Oh, I wish I had done that. I've done that plenty of times, and you will too if you haven't. It's okay. Stand up for yourself and don't feel guilty. Just be assertive, okay? And practice this. Practice being assertive. Now, remember, being assertive is standing up for yourself, but it's not being aggressive, okay? Practice being assertive where there's a minimal risk to you so you can experience success. So if you know that you're fixing to step in front of a hothead, okay? They're just really angry all the time. Careful, okay? But practice being assertive when you know you're going to be successful, okay? So I want you to practice that. Practice. When you're being assertive, You're going to use a firm voice. You're going to maintain eye contact. That's a tough one. People, sometimes when they're not feeling confident and they're not feeling real sure of what's going to happen, and they haven't tried this out. The one thing that comes quickly is they don't make eye contact. They won't look you in the eye. And you know what? Folks who are aggressive and less than pleasant, they jump on that. When they see you're not making eye contact and, kind of a shaky voice and not sure of yourself, they try to trip you up. So when you are handling a conflict situation or a difficult situation, or you're trying to ask for something, stand up tall, have a firm voice, and look them in the eye. Okay? Look them in the eye. Make sure your verbal and nonverbal messages match. In other words, if you're trying to be very positive, but you got a growl on your face, that's not going to work, or your arms are folded and you're kind of slumped over. So make sure your verbal and nonverbal match. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Okay? Effective communication. State your own feelings and needs. Just be direct. Listen and acknowledge others' feelings and needs. Have you ever tried to communicate with someone and you can't get a word in edgewise? Wait for the opportunity and then speak. Now, it's okay to have some moments of silence when you're communicating with people, whether it be due to conflict or a complaint. It's okay to have some silence. You don't have to fill all the silence with words, okay? Sometimes it's good to have a little silence because it gives you time to reflect and take a breath, okay? Accept responsibility for your statements or your actions, even if it created a conflict or created a little stir, if you will. And encourage problem solving. And the best way to encourage problem solving is through team action. Working together. Work through it. Use facilitative type techniques. Okay? Simply state what you want. I need this, or I felt hurt when. Agree with part of the criticism or argument only if you feel it. Okay? Don't avoid being condescending, I guess. If you don't agree with it, then don't, okay? Because if it's because of a conflict or a criticism, it'll only make you a little more uncomfortable, okay? So be very careful. Be very careful with that. Introducing specifics. Turn the argument or the conflict into an opportunity for productive negotiations. Remember, stick to the facts. Don't bring up old news, okay? Stick to that one particular incident and repeat the message. Make sure that you are hearing and clarifying everything so that it will have a positive outcome, okay? So make sure that you clarify by repeating the message, and avoid defensive statements like you, because that always lays blames. And then your communication stoppers. Communication stoppers are like, eye rolls and huffing and puffing, arms folding. That shuts down a conversation real quick. When you fold your arms and you're shaking your head and you're rolling your eyes, those are communication stoppers. Okay? So when if you ever have to confront an individual, again, while you're doing all this communication, you're going to consider the location, try to use positive reinforcement, allow time for learning, and the sandwich method. Have you ever heard of that? That's kind of not really outdated. You won't see it in a lot of textbooks, but it's good to use. If you're dealing with conflict or a complaint, or especially between individuals, acknowledge that, I really like how you have that take charge attitude. You take charge and you seem to be very organized. However, when you do that, you tend to hurt your coworkers' feelings, and it causes stress within the team. And I know, because you're a take charge individual, you'll be able to work this out. Let's come up with a solution to help everybody. So sandwiches, say something nice or something positive, then you tell them what the issue is, which is, you're hurting everybody's feelings because you're such a, bulldozer. And then, because I know you're a hard worker, you'll be able to fix this, so let's work toward a solution. So it's a sandwich. something positive, what the problem is, and something positive as moving toward a resolution, if you will, okay? Certainly workplace communication. We got to maintain a professional image. We got to be sensitive to diversity. Not everybody is just like us, okay? We don't all think exactly alike, okay? And you know what? We have folks from a diverse standpoint, such as different parts of the country, different countries. Would you agree diversity might be from an age range? You know, we want to make sure that we're sensitive to that. We don't want to, you know, make fun of the young nurses or the old nurses or talk about folks who got pulled or, you know, oh, us cardiac nurses are better than those you know, those kinds of things. So be very sensitive to diversity, because you know what? If we all like the same thing and we're all just alike, wouldn't that be boring? Right. So anyhow, we got to be sensitive to diversity. Always use professional communication. We know that. You want to avoid the grapevine, folks, okay? Always communicate face-to-face. If you got an issue with somebody or you need to talk to a coworker, do it face-to-face. Don't send someone to tell someone what you want to tell them yourself, okay? So that makes sense. Don't send others to do your dirty work. You talk to the person, okay? Because that's how you're going to move toward a solution. Don't spread rumors. You know, it's easy to fall into that trap. You know, once you get all comfortable in your work, and, you know, it's usually day shift against night shift and that kind of thing. Or, you know, that unit always gets the extra help and we don't. Be careful with that. Be careful with spreading rumors, because guess what's going to happen? The person that started the rumor is not going to fess up that they started it. They're only going to repeat what you said. So be very careful with that. Make sure what is in writing is clear and accurately understood. Written communication, proper format, proper titles. KISS, keep it short and simple. Proofread carefully. In other words, in this day and time of, you know, Twitter and text and this and that, you got to be real careful. We got to learn that, you know, when you text, you're supposed to abbreviate words. Of course, if you've gotten a text from me, you know I don't abbreviate it, spell it all out. It takes me forever. But it's one of those things that you've got to be professional in your communication. You know, don't use slang words. Use appropriate words and spelling. Always spell check. Okay? If you're writing something, you need to make certain that you do spell check. Learn some etiquette. I mean, you all speak proper English and such, but, you know, when you're communicating and it's in the written form, electronic, be it letter, snail mail, or email or such, make sure that you address the person you're talking to appropriately. Use correct grammar. If it's phone communication, folks, let's don't put anybody on permahold, okay? Like if someone calls your unit and they want to speak to Sally, so just a minute, let me get her. You put them on hold. You go find Sally. Don't leave the person on permahold. And I know y'all have experienced that in your lifetime. And, you know, if you're on the phone, let's say you're doing a phone interview, you know, if you can, step away from the crowd, turn down the music, turn down your TV, but step away from the crowd so that there's not a lot of background noise. And if you're calling somebody, you know, to speak to them about a serious matter, or maybe it's a job interview or whatever, be cognizant of where you're at. If you're out in a big old restaurant and it's real loud, step outside. Okay? If you're using whatever, electronic communication, written communication, phone communication, be concise and to the point. Email cannot be validated by nonverbal. So you know what? Sometimes I've gotten emails or text messages and it comes across as one way and it's not meant that way. And so you have to be careful because the person reading it may interpret it different than its intent. Okay? So, you know, I think that in this age of text messages and Twitters and such, you know, the handwritten notes kind of almost a lost art. I want to ask you all to consider this. When you when you begin your interview process, and certainly at the end of your preceptor process, a handwritten thank you note will go a long way. For instance, if you start interviewing, and let's say they call you in for an interview, it's very nice to send a handwritten thank you note or drop one by, in a day or two for them to give to whoever you interviewed with. That says a lot because you took the time to write it and you took the time to thank them. Now, at the end of your preceptorship, I certainly hope that you will take the time to thank your preceptor with a handwritten note. And, students oftentimes will write a handwritten thank you note to the nurse manager saying, hey, this has been a great experience. I worked with Susie nurse and she was great. The staff is wonderful, those kinds of things. So it's a very powerful way of communicating. It has great impact. Okay? So let's move on down to group meetings. Once you start working, now you're going to be attending staff meetings and just for your unit as well as the hospital. Certainly you want to be prompt and plan to stay. Don't leave early. You want to attend all these meetings so you can find out what's happening. The best way to learn what's going on in the unit and what's coming down the pike is to go to these meetings. You got to come prepared. If you show up without anything to write with or write on, that's showing a lack of preparation or even that you really care. It's like, oh, Lord, I got to go in for this meeting. Go in with an open mind and ready to get some work done or volunteer for a committee or learn more about what's going on in the unit, okay? Now, there come a time when you're going to organize a meeting. You got to have an agenda, kind of a little plan, if you will, as to what you're going to talk about. And when that comes up, you want to stay task-focused, meaning stay on track. You want to listen carefully and clarify any action items, if you will, okay? Have you ever been in a meeting when folks are sitting there constantly texting? Or talking on their phone, or talking with their neighbor, or doodling, that's showing a lack of respect. So keep in mind that when you go to a meeting, pay attention to who's speaking, okay? And take notes. Sometimes you do get to doodling on your paper, that's okay, but, it's real key that when you're in these group meetings, especially once you start working, you got to pay attention, okay? Got to pay attention so you know what's going on. You want to stay in the know, okay? Now, another key form of communication, and certainly this is a little different because we have, bedside rounding and such, but just remember, you follow your facilities policies on, change of shift reports and how they go bedside reporting, okay, and all the pertinent things. And certainly, I think by bedside reporting, the patient's right there, that you're going to be professional and, we don't label patients and that sort of thing. And certainly you want to be timely and organized when you're reporting. Of course, we've got all these things on here that you're going to report, but when you're reporting or it's getting close to time for a report, you want to be timely. You don't want the next shift to have to wait on you. Sure, you may not be finished, but maybe you can type some loose ends and after your report. So, but when you're communicating a report, again, we want to be concise and accurate and professional. Okay. And again, this is just some more on the end of shift report. I've got on here where to give the report. Certainly now like I said, we've changed, and so it's all bedside reporting. But you still have to respect confidentiality, and you want to be careful as to who's listening to your report. Okay, some hospitals, not so much around here, but a lot of hospitals may tape theirs. Or may sit and do a one-on-one, maybe between charge nurse to charge nurse or supervisor to supervisor. They may still have an oral type report or maybe a taped report, okay? But above all else, you just stay task-oriented and stay on track, okay? Now, one thing I don't have on here, let's see. Well, communicating with others. When you're communicating with physicians, and there's going to come a time where you'll have to call them on the phone, the first instinct is when you call a doctor, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry to have to call you. Well, there's some doctors that'll say, then why did you? So we don't want to apologize for phoning, because I can assure you, if your patient's condition warrants calling the doctor, then you call the doctor. If you need clarification on an order that was written, then you call the doctor and get clarification, okay? So, but don't apologize. But say who you are. You have to identify yourself. I know you all know SBAR, so I'm going to put that back for you all to make certain you have that in your memory banks, because you'll see SBAR written and talked about from here on out. So, but when you're calling the doctor, certainly going to state your business and be specific in the information you're giving him, okay? And you want to have all your ducks in the row before you call him. Like, for instance, you want to make sure you've got the current vital signs, you got their chart pulled up in the system, and, the lab work, because he's going to ask for all of that. So you don't want to ever have to say, oh, hang on, let me go get this, or, oh, let me pull this up. So make sure you have everything with you when you do call a physician, okay? And if he gives you orders, repeat them back, okay? Because you want to make sure that you heard what you heard, okay? So, when you're communicating with others, depending on your position or that position, your supervisors, your superiors, always follow the chain of command. Use your proper channels, okay? Use your proper channels. Be prepared if you have to call a doctor on the phone, and if you want him to come in and see your patient, then just state that. I think you need to come in here and see this patient. Be persistent. We saw that on the Cusin film. Be persistent. As a nurse, if you need that doctor to come in, be persistent, okay? You need to get a hold and a handle on your personal communication style, what works best for you. Try to appear confident. Be confident. Avoid communicating when you're angry. We've already talked about that. You don't want to lash out when you're angry. Acknowledge the point of view, and be respectful of that. When you're dealing with your superiors or supervisors, they've worked hard. Perhaps, let's say they've worked hard. They've got experience. Listen to them. They've got a lot under their belt. They can help you achieve your goals. They can help you improve your performance, and it takes open communication, a two-way communication. I want to tell you this: never go above or around your supervisors. Okay? Don't go around them. If it's an issue with them, address it with them. And if it's an uncomfortable issue, or it's an allegation, if you will, you'll need to, make sure you have appropriate person in there with you. But, always directly communicate with your supervisor before going further up the chain of command, because you know what? If you go past them, the person you go to is going to say, well, have you talked to your supervisor about that? Well, no, I just bypassed her. They're going to send you back, and then that's even more uncomfortable. So, if it's your supervisor, address it with them. And if you don't get satisfaction or a resolution, then you can go up the chain of command. But, you don't want to ever jump around. Follow your chain of command. When you are dealing with patient care attendants, folks under your direction, don't assume they know what you're talking about. Always give clear, detailed instructions in a non-authoritative manner, okay? Ask for feedback to validate the message. Follow up. Everybody on your team's going to need to feel valued. Not that you have to spend the whole time, chatting them up and working hard to make them feel valued, but it's about mutual respect. Okay? You've got to show respect for folks under your direction as well as folks laterally to you, your peers. You've got to show respect. Okay? Be flexible. Be flexible. People who achieve success in their professional careers are enthusiastic. They let others know they are happy to be at work. They work harder. They work longer. They move accurately. They're pleasant and sincere in creating a personal and professional image. So it's real important that you be flexible. I want you to be enthusiastic about what you're doing, because if you don't, guess what? Folks are going to know it. They're going to always wonder, why you're unhappy. So, if you don't like what you're doing, find something that makes you happy, that you're passionate about. Okay, and obviously nursing is your thing because you're all here. So just know there's so many opportunities in nursing that you can switch and do. If there's constant conflict in a particular area that you just can't deal with, then move on. Find something else that's going to make you happy. Okay. Now, with all that to say, let's talk a little bit about difficult people. You know, this all kind of ties back into leadership and management. You're going to have to deal with difficult people. I don't want you to be one of those, okay? But, you know, you've heard this before. Sherman tanks, those are domineering, abusive. They tend to be very overwhelming, okay? The tanks, they just, you know, mow you down. They lack interpersonal skills. You know, they know what's right, and they're always right. These folks are prone to temper tantrums. Avoid arguing with the Sherman tanks, because you won't get too far with them, okay? Stand your ground, though. Control your anger, but avoid arguing, because then it becomes a tag team wrestling match, all right? So they're very difficult people to deal with because they're very overwhelming, but you stand your ground and control your anger. Let them show out and melt down, but you stand your ground. Then you got your snipers. Those are the pot shots. You know, they kind of do it in a covert action. They make these little cutting remarks. They're very condescending. They're teasing. And their purpose and their goal is to hurt your feelings. Okay? Smoke them out. Covert to overt. So, you know what? When they start taking those pot shots, don't let it get to you. And sometimes that's what makes them stop. When they see they can't rally you up and get to you, that makes them stop. Okay? Turn the tables on them. Now, don't get into a name calling, okay, and kind of teasing them, but don't let them see you sweat, if you will. If they think it doesn't bother you, they'll quit. Then you got your constant complainers. Those folks feel very powerless, okay? They may identify some real problems, but they offer no solutions. They'd rather complain. Because that's what they're accustomed to. That's a comfort zone for them, to just complain. Have you ever been around people that constantly complain? You can't make them happy. Best thing to do is try to move them toward problem solving. Help them to move toward problem solving. Don't agree with their complaints, if you will, if you really don't, okay? Because then you become one of them. Then you got your clams. You know who these people are. They got their arms folded. They clam up, just as it says. They refuse to respond. They refuse to respond. Use open-ended communication, so they have to answer you. And indicate that you expect a response, okay? Don't fill in their silence with your conversation. And I usually say use the FSS, that's the friendly silent stare, but it's hard to show you a friendly silent stare lecturing at my desk, so the next time I see you all, I will show you the friendly silent stare. If you want to diffuse a situation pretty quick, use this stare, because you kind of got a little grin on your face, and you're staring them down, okay? So that'll help diffuse any kind of outburst situation. But if you're dealing with a clam, indicate I'm waiting for a response, okay? And you know, give them a chance to respond, okay? Power. That's the ability to influence other and effect a change. Oftentimes, with power, we can affect change. Certainly, empowerment is to provide the nurse with more autonomy in their roles. You know, that's like a shared governance, okay? Autonomy is being able to make decisions. You know, not to say that you make your decisions solely by yourself, but it gives you some credit for your experience and your knowledge and your wisdom. So that's a good thing. Certainly the amount of power depends on the willingness of the administrators to allocate it. And it also depends on the nurses to accept it. Power and responsibility always go hand in hand. So when you've got the power, you also have the responsibility not to abuse that power, but to use it wisely. Okay? There are different types of power. It's power of authority, legitimate. You know, a head nurse, she's got the power, right? Have you ever met someone who has reverent power? They're just because of their characteristics, they've got charisma. They're liked and admired by others. That's called reverent power because of just how they are. You've got expert power, and those are perceived as experts, if you will. It's because of their specialized knowledge and their skills, so they've got that expert power. And then you've got power of information. This is the most abused type of power. It's like you've got the knowledge needed by others, and you have the ability to withhold it if you want to. So that one's awfully abused, okay, most often. Then you have the coercive types of power. It usually results in fear of the consequences. So that's how they exert their power, by threatening. And here's an example. They might, there's a threat of receiving unfavorable assignments. So that's kind of coercive power. So, and you may have worked with people who, have that kind of power that if you don't do what I say, you're going to get a terrible assignment. And that's wrong. That's very wrong. Okay. And I hope you don't ever enlist that type of power. Okay. Certainly, at some point, you'll be making very paramount decisions, okay? You have what it takes. We still have some road to travel down before we get to there, and understand with opportunities comes challenges, and you will be able to rise to the challenge, okay? You've got what it takes. You've got what it takes, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about reality check. I'm going to put you on hold for just a second, and I'll come back to this, okay? Hold on. Okay, thank you for your patience there. I had to take a little break and answer my phone. Let's talk a little bit about reality shock as you continue in your career and as you start your new job. It's going to be a big shock, because you're going to go from caring for 1 or 2 patients to maybe you'll have a load of 6 patients. That's a big shock, and it can be a little upsetting, if you will. Okay, so your book and all talks about and breaks down some of your reality shock phases, if you will. The honeymoon. You see the world of nursing looking quite rosy. Okay, you're often you're fascinated with the thrill of arriving. You have arrived. Now, would you agree? You have arrived, and that makes sense, because everybody is all excited, and you've graduated, you've taken your board, you've got a job, things are better for you and your family, and everybody's excited. So that's the honeymoon phase, and that makes sense, right? And then after a while, as you begin to deal with different types of, day in and day out, folks will refer to it as, like, oh, another day, oh, I can't wait for my weekend off, and that sort of thing. As you start to get comfortable and settle into your schedule, sometimes that news starts to wear off, and it happens quicker for some than others, and not everybody experiences that. Sometimes folks kind of get just a little disillusioned. It's not what I thought it was going to be, or this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, and that's certainly understandable. So, unfortunately, we might move into a shock and rejection phase, and hopefully that doesn't last very long. And again, not everybody will move into this, okay? Sometimes, as I said, the new wears off, and maybe you maybe you have you may have a little more less energy. You become a little tired, a little disgruntled. Maybe you've got some disgruntled coworkers, and so you kind of fall into that trap. And gosh, I'm always getting pulled, or gosh, I always got 6 to 8 patients. I can't spend the time with my patients I need to. Reality has set in, and it's kind of shocking, because you thought that you thought that you were going to be able to spend time with every patient, and yes, you will. It won't be like that every day, but you're going to have some tough days, and some days you might feel like a failure, and you feel like you just can't you can't see it through, or maybe you become real critical of yourself. Some folks get real disillusioned, and some folks even leave profession at this phase, because it's so overwhelming and so not what they thought it was going to be. And sometimes they're put into a position that they're very uncomfortable with. And a lot of times, maybe you've been a nurse for, 6 months and they make you a charge nurse. And maybe you don't want to be a charge nurse. And maybe you're not ready to be a charge nurse. But because of the turnover and such, you're the one with the most experience. That does happen. So, unfortunately, you may go through, it starts out wonderful. And you know what? For the most part, it's wonderful all the time. It's just something there's always going to be great times, but there's going to be some tough times too. I don't want you to get disillusioned, but some people do. Sometimes it's just like it's burnout. You start moving toward burnout. And, like I said, when it's no longer fun and exciting, find something that does make you excited and passionate in nursing. And then you move on to the recovery phase. There's a decrease in, tension. You're starting to get your sense of humor back. Maybe you changed units, maybe you changed shifts. Maybe the management changed, or something within the organization changed and made things better. Maybe you got a pay raise. That does go a long way. Maybe things have changed at home. So there's lots of reasons for why we move from one phase to the other, but the main thing is that we do move through those phases and don't stay in the shock and awe, if you will, phase, feeling rejected and like a failure. Here's the thing, folks. We're going to make mistakes. You got to learn from those mistakes and try not to stay in that rut. Get a hobby. You're in school. You haven't had a chance to have a hobby. Okay. So once you get out and you get your 90 days under your belt and you're starting to feel comfortable, get a hobby. Start doing something for yourself besides school. Yeah, I hope you will go back to school, but if it's not in the cards at this time, then do something fun. Get reacquainted with your family and your friends. A lot of students say, well, after I finish my orientation, I'm going to clean my house. Well, great, if that's what makes you happy, but understand that, there's going to be periods of times you might not feel so rosy, but it'll work itself out. I think finding a hobby and doing something besides all you do is going to work and home every day, that makes it tough. So while you're working full time, make sure you do something fun along the way. Do something with your family and get reacquainted with your community, if you will. Okay? Some things to help you with the reality shock role transformation. There's a book called From Novice to Expert by Patricia Benner. Now, I'm not asking you to read this book right now because you don't have time, okay? Once you graduate, I'd love for you to get this little thin book. I'll bring it to the classroom or on testing days for some of you that test outside of class, meaning that are online folks, okay? I'm going to show you this book. It's very thin, but it's a great book. It talks about going from a novice nurse to an expert nurse and some of the trials and tribulations and some things that you can expect. It will help you as you move along your profession. It's an easy read book, but it's very uplifting and when you get time after you graduate, I want you to read this book. I think it will help you as you continue on. And then some rules of the road. Let me share a few tips, and we'll talk about this in class periodically. Understand that, now that once you graduate, okay, we're moving toward graduation, if you will, because that's my plan for you all, is to move to graduation, okay? We got some work to do, but we'll get there. I want you to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself once you graduate, and as we're getting that way, take care of yourself. Take time for yourself. Take time and take your time planning your transition from being a student nurse to a new nurse. Take your time. No one says you have to be the first one into orientation, okay? If you need a little time, a little break, then take it. Don't take too long, but do take some time. And certainly you want to take your boards right out of the chute. As soon as you can take your boards, you want to take it. That much is off your plate. That stressor is gone. Understand this, as you pursue and continue in nursing, you're going to make mistakes. We're just going to learn from them, okay? We're not going to dwell on it, but you're going to learn for them. And another rules of the road, if you will, there may be a curve ahead. Anticipate changes in your schedule, and it's okay if your schedule changes. Be flexible. Don't be so rigid that you can't change your schedules. Learn to compromise. Yield. Think of the yield sign. We don't always have to be right. It feels good to always be right, but we don't always have to be right. Learn to compromise. Be part of a solution. If there's a problem, we're dealing with conflict, be part of that solution. Exit. When you think of the exit sign, pay attention to your road signs. Don't take an exit you don't really want to. In other words, before you exit your job, evaluate the situation. Look before you leap, making sure the change will improve your work situation. Some people get so disillusioned. They're in that shock and rejection phase that they just jump ship. I'm just going to quit. Well, before you jump ship, make sure you know what you're doing. Never leave a job that you haven't given a notice to, because you don't want to burn your bridges. And keep this in mind, the grass is not always greener on the other side. Okay? It's not always. Just because it's bad on this area and you're jumping into another area doesn't mean it's not going to be bad there, okay? So, be careful before you leap, okay? Make sure you do your homework, if you will. Another one I'd like to share with you, the roadside park ahead. Take a break and remember, do something for yourself every day. Take at least 10 minutes every day to yourself, where you're not studying, you're not doing, just take 10 minutes for yourself. Rejuvenate your batteries. You'll feel better afterwards. And then look for the humor in each day. Take time to laugh. You'll be surprised at how that makes you feel. Laughing is the best medicine. And then professionalism. We'll talk about this in the classroom, and we'll put a little something up on a discussion forum for our online cohorts. But certainly when you think of professionalism, I'm going to leave you with these thoughts, and you can just think in these terms and write your own notes down. Think about behavior. What constitutes professional behavior? When you think of behavior, think about professional appearance. Think about professional practice. Thinking in those terms, who's cutting corners, who's taking shortcuts, who is just doing enough to get by on. Think of communication when we're thinking of professionalism. Professional communication, responsibility and accountability. We're going to be responsible for lots of things. We got to be accountable, and when we make a mistake, we stand up and come clean with it. You know what I mean? Fess up. Compassion and concern. That's why we're here. We're compassionate folks. We enjoy caring for patients. That's part of our profession. That's part of what we get to do. And know that there's some dedication and loyalty that comes with this profession. So think in those terms. So when you see this slide and you get to this point in the recording, and yes, it's been lengthy, but just write down on a piece of paper what you think professionalism means with regards to behavior, appearance, practice, communication, responsibility and accountability, compassion and concern, dedication and loyalty. And then I'll leave you with this. When we're talking about professionalism and behavior, be kind to others, act accordingly, because it might catch up with you, right? And I don't mean that ugly. I just mean we're all kind to each other. Continue to do so, because when others see us being so kind, it's infectious, okay? That's all I have for this segment, and I appreciate your attention and patience. And next week I'll record some more things as we go along. And if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to, you can email me, you can text me, or see me in class, or however you want to do it. But take care and have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye.